Hello and welcome to another edition of Knickerbocker Banter. I'm your host, as always, Harris Wishard. With me today, like he was the other day, Kevin Atwar, our offseason correspondent, and the man behind the scenes, right, that's been video editing and working very hard on this program, John Hammerman. How you guys feeling today?
We're good.
Yeah.
Good, Harris. Thanks for having me back on.
Of course. So let's get right to it, right? The most important news of the day. Saw it about 10 a.m. Isaiah Hartenstein accepted a 3-year, $87 million contract to become a member of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Your instant reaction to this first, John?
I mean, the main reaction is congrats to IHart. We loved everything. I don't think there's one fan out there that's going to say anything negative today. $29 million a year is something I don't even think the Knicks, if they could spend all their money, would have done. But very happy that he was able to go out and get paid. You had a guy who came in for 2 years, $16 million, and now he's leaving the program as a $30 million a year guy. So I think congrats to IHart. It looks very good for the Knicks in the future. If you're trying to entice other maybe guys who aren't as respected in the league, they can work with us and you'll get the bag at the other end. So all in all, it's a really good day for IHart. It really is a big loss for the Knicks, but it's a loss that I think they can overcome.
Have your thoughts?
In true Knicks fashion, Harris, the last time we spoke, we gained a valuable piece and then we lost a valuable piece, right, today. So, yeah, hey, the guy got paid. Happy for him. Big loss for the Knicks, especially from what he did at the second half of the season. But Mitch Robbins is there. Hopefully he's healthy and ready to come back. And we'll roll with the punches and see what else we can do to supplement the loss.
Yeah, and as I told you guys before we were chatting, it's not like he's turning down, it's not like he's getting this money and going to a lesser team. And you got to have respect for what the Thunder are building. It's rare that you could get that payday and you would think, oh, maybe he's going to a team that's on the up and is overpaying for somebody and try to make a splash. This is a Thunder team that's in position to win a championship right now. So like Kev was saying, it's the best of both worlds for him. But something that when I was getting these texts today and talking to people about, I'm high on IHart. I like him as a player, but I do think that he benefited from being here as well. Love what he started to do, passing the basketball right at the elbow, and had his little floater going on and created a ton of second chances. But the New York media treating him like Shaquille O'Neal was a little overwhelming for me today. I do think the Knicks survived this one. They'll feel a little bit. I think a lot of it has to do with the health of Robinson.
Yeah, and I think people need to remember that going into last year, Mitchell Robinson was the starting center on this team. So it's not like, oh, we got to, hopefully Mitch can be a starter. We know he can be a starter. It's just if he can stay healthy. I will say my one counterpoint is I think IHart was the perfect center to play alongside Brunson. I think you learned the pick and roll and everything they were doing, and that really blossomed when, honestly, I don't think Tibbs was drawing those plays up early in the year, and it was kind of force of habit with the injuries. And you saw IHart really shine. Yes, I think he is a product, a product of the system a little bit. I also think it's a bigger game than the Knicks asked him to play. I think going to OKC, you might see him take a little bit more threes. You may see him, really play off guys like Chet, who could pass very well. Shea obviously could play very well. So I think it's a very, very good get for Oklahoma City. It is a big loss because I don't think Mitch has that same, bag to where he can really elevate Brunson in a way that I think IHart really did. So,
yeah, and you know what? Defensively, we've always talked about Robinson as the better player, but even Hartenstein was holding his own. I think about the block he had on Maxey driving down the lane to secure that Game 2 victory. Obviously, the biggest rebound of the season, right? The one to kick out to Anunoby. So I understand what he brings to the table. I just think now when you added Bridges, and we'll get to that trade and completing it in a second, but you have to understand that you're not going to be able to keep everyone here. And if it was going to be a guy, it looked like he was going to be the odd man out, and you move forward, right? And you do lose some things where you gain in other areas. The Knicks move on, and I think they'll be okay. I think they'll survive this, where they never really got a ton of offense. I know what you're saying with shot creation. I know what you're saying with his ability to pass the ball and play off these guys, but it's not like you were ever throwing it to him expecting him to go get his own offense. And again, not anybody, you talk about him shooting threes, maybe on OKC, maybe he has that Al Horford revelation at some point in his career and steps behind the three, but he wasn't doing that here. So again, a lot of respect to him. I love the way he played. I praised him throughout the season. I'm not going to lose sleep over this tonight. And I am going to expect the Knicks to be active. And I don't know if that means a trade is coming. I don't know, got to sign and trade and see what options are available. I know some centers are flying off the board right now, some backup options. But Kev, where do you expect now the Knicks to turn from here now that Isaiah Hartenstein is no longer a member of the Knicks?
Yeah, so the biggest thing that we're all waiting, like the domino to fall, is what happens with the Mikal Bridges trade, right? Like we just for a quick cap.
Give me the cap update.
Cap update is that we are restricted now. At the trade is not final, but as of right now, if it was, we would be restricted at a certain number. 178 million to spend, right? It would be hard capped is what they're calling it at the first apron. So because we're sending out $19 million in Bogey's contract and absorbing and taking on Mikal's 23, that triggered the hard cap. So we're at about $172 million on our salary, and we can essentially only spend like 5.8, close to $6 million. With the first apron, it allows us to also use the mid-level exception, which is $5.2 million. So essentially, if we want to get into the into specifics, we can trade Precious, sign and trade Precious. Any person being signed and traded would have to sign a 3-year deal. So Burks being signed to a 3-year deal is less likely, and then being traded just because of his age. And but so Precious would be the guy. But now we lost the center, right? So that brings in the idea of keeping Precious and then still being able to use the mid-level exception. So it's slim. It's, it's not like we're going out there and signing anyone of substance. As we've seen, all the centers are flying off the board today. And, there are some ways we can, once we do that, if we did that sign and trade, then we would have about $12 million extra to spend, as opposed to just having 5, right? So there's other options like adding another team. And absorbing a center that way. It's too many possibilities right now.
Yeah, you got to put your GM hat. John, do you expect Precious to be a member of this team next year?
I think the easiest thing for the Knicks to do is to try and bring Precious back. If they want to do a bigger move, they have to sign and trade Precious. Unless you're one of the believers that think Miles McBride is gone, which I don't believe so. I don't either. I think they value him. They signed him to a fantastic contract. I don't think Alex Burks is getting a 3-year deal on the market. So like we said, it has to be Precious that goes out. And it would open up around $16 million as opposed to $5 million. So that is a very big difference. And I think this front office is too smart to not allow that to happen. And I'm already seeing rumors that Precious is getting a lot of interest. So I would expect the Knicks to have the opportunity to do a sign and trade for Precious, especially since they just got a boatload of second-round picks back in the draft. They can easily tag 1 and 2 on. They can bring stuff back. There's a lot of things they can do. Without the trade being finalized yet, that's kind of what I think the Knicks are waiting for. We'll discuss in a little bit. The free agent market is not that appealing. The trade market is, could be anyone. No one but Leon Rose is doing. So I would never rule anyone out. But the only way that I think they can get into that trade market is with a sign and trade first of Precious.
Yeah, we heard a lot about the trade market and Mitchell Robinson, which becomes more unlikely by the day. I mean, I think it's a foregone conclusion. I don't know how you guys feel about this, that number 23, will be suiting up for the Knicks in October. We heard his name a lot on draft day, and then we'll get into the strategy that the Knicks had and who will be on their roster, who you think is going to be on their roster. We'll play around maybe with some of those numbers. But as John was talking to me earlier about, we didn't really see them go too big. I know they went towards the end of the draft in Ariel, and not even going to try to pronounce that name either, but they didn't really go center early, right? They went swingmans from France, right? 6'9", and then they went the guard from Marquette. So when you saw that happening and you saw them moving that money around, there was some optimism, real optimism, that Hartenstein might be back.
Yeah, and I never thought Hartenstein would ever be back until draft night. Once draft night was going on, I'm like, why are they doing this? This makes no sense. Like, they could have easily taken, Kyle Flapowski in the first if they wanted. There's a whole story behind that.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a New York thing.
But at the time, I was like, what a perfect replacement for IHart. He's right here. And it was just like, well, they know more than we know. So they must know IHart's coming back at this point if they're doing all this. And, I don't think they're going to send the first-round pick overseas anymore. I think he can safely learn underneath OG and Bridges, which is, I think, a big win, actually. We'll see about any other move.
You don't think even G League, though, for him? You think he's actually going to be on the...
You could G League him. You could G League all these guys.
Right.
Depends on how they want to fill the roster. I just think he has an opportunity to learn under two of the best wings in the NBA. And the more you have him around them, because I think... Although all the reports from the draft, now we're getting into the draft now. Yeah. All the reports from the draft is he needs to learn defensive IQ. He does not have the greatest. He has all the athleticism. He can shoot. He can score. He just doesn't really know what to do. Doesn't know the rotations. And I mean, if you're going to tell me to bring anyone into the Knicks and be like, "Hey, Tibbs, let's work on one thing with a guy," it's going to be the defensive rotations and getting like you remember Mitch as a rookie. And McBride as a rookie was a great on-ball defender, but he didn't make the best rotations all the time. So it's one thing I think they could benefit by having him in the G League like they did with McBride. Bring him up, bring him down, bring him up, bring him down. You know how it all plays out. But
go ahead. Go ahead, John.
I think Kolek's a guy though that they'd want to give a chance on the main team with. If I think they give Deuce the first chance, and then if he doesn't work out, or is it not that he doesn't work out, just isn't doing the backup point guard role. I think they'll give him more minutes. But it was very surprising on draft night, just to wrap it all up, that they would keep moving back to save money, and now they have the money saved, but what are they doing with it?
Was that going through your mind too, Kev? I know you were playing around with all this stuff also. Were you thinking that was a possibility, or why would they? I know we were talking about it again before. Why were they doing that?
Yeah, if they would have drafted 2 first-round picks, it would have been, I think, Pacome. I'll go with that pronunciation. Yeah. Is 2.7 million, and then the pick before him, the 24 and the 25 pick would have totaled 5.5 million, right? So we the initial thought was, okay, we drafted this essentially a draft and stash, what we thought would be, and that's kind of the money we'd be saving, right? And we were making space for IHart, or signing IHart, and then having the ability to not be capped out or restricted by the CBA rules. So I initially thought that. The second rounders, I didn't really give much thought to, because they're 2-way contracts and things like that. But we saw after all those roster moves they made, the Dwayne Washington, the other guys,
the fillers.
Yeah, the fillers. The guys at the end of the guys at Jeffries, Daquan Jeffries. Right. So they released them of their contracts, and it made room for some promising rookies. Right, Kolek seems like a young point guard that we'll try to work with. I do think if he's going to be a G leaguer, I would on the surface, right, it seems like he's going to make the team, because we don't really have a backup point guard. But we know our head coach. He would rather a veteran point guard at the end of the bench. At least I would assume. Could
you see McBride playing the 2 on the bench? I know DiVincenzo, like with the way McBride plays, I can't see Can you push DiVincenzo to the 3? I mean, I don't know how that would work right away. I mean,
Well,
I've even heard that.
Who's our center? That's all we're talking about.
They don't know. They don't even know. They don't know who's coming off the bench to play center yet. I mean, you think Jericho Sims at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Sims is here until he's not.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think they'll prioritize a veteran minimum contracts like center or point guard.
They wouldn't bring in the Wildcat Lowry. You can't see that happening, right? No.
I think Lowry will have a chance and other teams to play more minutes. I mean,
right.
It's just
it doesn't make. I mean, what is he even worth right now?
Yeah, he can go. I know he can go back to Philly and play the same role he did. Right.
Maybe I'm just tired of seeing him in playoff series. I just hate that guy. Maybe I would hate him less if you. Maybe I would
he's
hate
one
him
of
less
those guys
on our side. Yeah.
He's one of those guys, right? You hate him until he's on your team.
Yeah, I just thought maybe why don't you just keep bringing Nova guys on until you can?
Yeah.
I said it was just cut, right? So
Yeah, there's a couple of them out there.
Do you have I know the market, as we've talked about, is getting slimmer and slimmer with bigs. Are there any other names that you guys have seen out there or would want the Knicks to target or think would be a good fit here?
Well, there's a couple names that it's getting down to it. Obviously, Mo Wagner is a guy that I think kind of is similar to IHart. I think he, does he want to come to New York? Does he go back to play with his brother? I don't know.
Mm.
I saw a lot of talk about James Wiseman today, former number 2 overall pick. I think he's an interesting guy to bring in, but if Tibbs is our head coach, I don't know how much he would want to work with him, but he is still young. He's 23 now, 24 maybe coming up. So he's still young. He's got a ton of athleticism. I mean, there's all the veterans in the world. If you want to bring one in, it's just we're at the bottom of the barrel. One interesting name, I don't know what you guys think about this. It's not a name I think they'll ever do because it's so un-Tibbs. But if you bring in a Dario Saric, a guy who is just a 3-point shooting 5, and we're talking about him as a minimum guy, not mid-level exception. Just a guy who can go out, rebound, hit threes. It's just so un-Tibbs-like. I don't see them.
Yeah.
But he's another guy that's all right, veteran, what he does, can really probably play very well with a Hart off the bench, McBride off the bench, He would fit. It's just so un-Tibbs-like. I don't see it happening.
Yeah, I think... Oh, so, yeah. So,
no, I get it.
Yeah, same thing. We're at the bottom of the center barrel here in free agency. There's an option of trade. I just don't have names for you. I don't. Around the league, there's a bunch of. I'm sure there's a bunch of centers making some money that we can fit in. It's just all about we don't really have draft equity to trade. We used most of it with Bridges, and I think that it may be time for Tibbs to think about Randall a little bit more at the 5.
I've thought about that too.
And he prioritizes the short rotation. So it's not something we've seen, but it may be something that we will be looking forward to.
Well, the thing that I argue about that is the trends of the NBA. You hear about positionless basketball. I understand you don't want Randall banging down low with the best centers in the NBA. I get it. But in terms of spacing, in terms of making other teams, making other teams guard you, right? It would work out for the Knicks, I think, in spurts, right? I wouldn't necessarily think of them as doing that consistently with Julius playing the 5. But when you have other guys that play bigger than they are, right? And you have a long 2 guard in Bridges. If you're going to do that lineup, you think Bridges at the 2, right? And you think about Anunoby at the 4, or even knock Bridges back to the 3 and play Dante at the 2. You have those guys that rebound and get after it that might be able to make up for your lack of size.
Yeah, I think
absolutely.
Yeah, Josh Hart can easily go play and have Randall center, and Randall can too. Let's not act like Randall's a bad rebounder. He's a great.
No, he's not. But when he's after it, he's definitely one of the better ones.
If you're matched up against the Celtics and in a playoff series, I would prefer Mitch's defense in the middle. But if you had to go Randall and have Hart as a guy that's just going after the boards, work. I don't think you'd survive an entire NBA season having Randall be your starting center. I think it'd be matchup based, and I think something you could do in the playoffs for sure. But I do think getting another, unless Jericho Sims becomes that body, and not really like anything I saw from Jericho Sims. He's athletic as hell. He can get boards. He seems like he knows what he's doing out there half the time. Not to say that maybe getting a bigger role and more minutes and getting extra time in the gym, maybe something happens there. Because he reminds me a lot of rookie Mitch. He's not a rookie anymore is the problem. But if you remember rookie Mitch had no idea what he was doing out there with his body. He was just flailing all over the place. That's all I see with Sims game right now. But
yeah,
he got in the gym. He worked hard. And now he's, the best offensive rebounding player maybe in NBA history besides Rodman. So, I mean, it's one of those things where Sims has all the athleticism to be a backup big. He just really, what we saw from him last year, I wouldn't count on it.
Yeah, I need to see a couple of seasons of Mitch Robinson being fully healthy before I put his name in that category. However,
healthy,
yes.
Yes,
his numbers at the start of last season were staggering. They really were. He did a terrific job. And I pointed out that he was doing much better not fouling. So the hope is that if Robinson is here, we could see that throughout the course of the regular season. And you asked me about the offseason and how I'm going to grade it or how I generally feel about it. Today isn't an unbelievable day, right? You feel a little bit upset maybe that he's not back, IHart. But again, Bridges here, re-signing Anunoby. I would have considered the offseason a disaster if Anunoby wasn't back. And I know there are injury concerns there as well. But to have those two guys and pushing Hart and DiVincenzo, guys that were forced to play 40-plus minutes at the end of the season last year, back to their worst. We are 5th and 6th and 7th best players on championship caliber teams. That makes me smile as a Knicks fan.
Yeah, I think that the last two things you said with Hart and Devo on the bench, just, look what they did as starters last year, right? So it strengthens our team. I know we lost IHart, but I think we're still in a great spot.
Yeah, and it's the point I wanted to bring up to you is that the Knicks have done something that teams work years to do, and that is develop a culture and an identity. Once you have your culture and identity in place, it's really easy to figure out what players will fit that culture and identity. You don't take a Kevin Knox in the first round if you know the kind of team you have. That's where a guy like Kolek in the second round, he's coming in day one. I'm overlooked. He loves to compare himself to Jalen Brunson, so now he gets to work with him. He's an excellent fit. You bring in a Bridges, people are crazy about the number of picks we gave up. He's a fit. Imagine they went out and paid half and got Paul George, and now you disrupt the culture. That would be devastating. So they go out, they know what they need. That's why we're talking right now, what center are they going to go out? What are they going to do? I'm confident in this front office because they've developed a culture. They know this player will fit what we do. It was tough for Tibbs early on because I don't think the front office was fully getting Tibbs his guys. And now that Tibbs has his guys, I think you're really starting to see, okay, Dante, Hart going back to the bench. You know how if it was anyone else, how that would be a problem? Yeah. I'd when guys are getting minutes in their players, and you'd say, okay, next year now you're back on the bench. That would be a problem. But they have a culture, we have an identity, and those guys are selfless. And especially Hart. Hart wants the break. But I think it's something not to overlook because now that we have the culture established, it's all about how do we maintain the culture? How is the New York Knicks basketball? We don't do Heat culture anymore. We got Knicks culture. How we get everything to be, we work hard, we rebound, we're play our butts off, and we're going to go every single night and try and win. And if you want to join that, you join that. I know IHart was all about that. I'm going to miss him, and I hope he brings that same mentality to OKC. But we'll bring someone else in who will fit that exact same mentality.
Sure. And you know what? Like I said, if you could bring a young big in, for instance, you mentioned the name Weissman. Now, this is a guy that struggled, right? He hasn't found his way. It didn't work in Golden State. He's been with Detroit, right? Nothing's really worked out for him. I would have confidence that if he was here, that whatever potential he did have, that the Knicks would find it at this point. And that is the opposite of what you could say about the Knicks not so long ago, right? This is where I remember people saying, man, if Curry came to the Knicks in 2009, his career would have been completely different. And you know what? It's hard to argue that because at the time, it was a very toxic place to be. As to your point, John, it's the exact opposite right now. Anybody that come here can expect because of the selflessness, and that's why some people get on Randall sometimes. I back Julius, but I know he's got to buy in. I know he's got to buy into what the team's doing and understand some decisions that he has to make in order for this thing to work. But like you said, there's a confidence here, and then Bridges just adds to it that no matter who they bring in and what direction they go in, it's going to be the right one. And honestly, that's all you can ask for as a fan. Kevin, what do you think about, I've been wanting to ask you about the Randall thing. Randall's future here, we've talked about his name being thrown up in trade rumors and whatnot. What kind of season do you expect him to have? And do you think because now of the so much Nova and so much of the other guys that he'll still have his same success and he'll be off to the right start this year coming off the shoulder?
Yeah, it's health. Health is what we need first, right? We need him to come back fully healthy. I think that the topic of fitting in is, I think he'll be fine, man. Right before he was having a great stretch in January. I know we had that, the world's greatest January this year. And I think he'll fit in fine. He will get the ball less in terms of like ISO, but he's a willing passer sometimes.
Yeah.
He can be a willing passer.
Yeah.
So I think he had an interview the other day, and he was talking about how included he felt even though he was not playing from the guys, Jalen and Josh, talking to him, giving him pep talks and stuff like that. So hopefully the chemistry and the vibes are right outside, off the court, and it'll translate on. And yeah, man, I love Julius. He's the one kind of that started this whole, you just spoke about all those guys that weren't the right fit. And at times he didn't seem like it, but he made it work and he's still here, So I think that he can build off that. And I'm looking forward to seeing I'm looking forward to him having the same year he was having last year.
Yeah, and I also just look up Jalen Brunson's catch and shoot numbers when the ball was passed by Julius. Like, we have this vision of Brunson in our heads because he was so demanded on last year. They needed him so much that you have this vision of who Brunson is. And yes, he is an MVP caliber guy, can take the ball. But Randall made his life so much easier. If you just go back and watch those games, like, yes, Randall sometimes just doesn't do things that make sense to the spinning in the lane stuff.
Right.
He's still an ISO player at heart, but I really do believe that he's a pro, first and foremost. He's the OG. He is the veteran on the team. Before any of these guys were here, it was him and Mitch, right? So he's the kind of guy that I think even Brunson looks up to. I think even Hart looks up to. I think he's the kind of guy that you want to keep in the building. Now, I think his contract number might get a little messy going forward. A whole different conversation. But just talking about next year, I don't see any resentment towards bringing in Bridges. I think he's just I think he'll make OG's life so much easier. I think he'll make Bridges' life so much easier. Like, you're going to give the ball in the post, and you have to double team him unless you've got a world-class defender on, or he will bully you. Like, just go back and watch those highlights. To anyone who forgot, go back and watch Randall getting double-teamed every single possession. Every single one. They were leaving.
It's going to be harder to do that this year, adding another shooter.
You can't. Even with Mitch on the court, you can't leave Mitch because he'll be a lob threat. So I think Randall's the perfect piece for this offense. I think the only negative I have about Randall is his contract situation going forward is going to be a little messy because the Knicks have now invested so much money And I think if Brunson does come out this offseason and take that pay cut to sign now instead of next year, it will relieve a little bit of that. But I will say I have no concerns about Randall being not only a star on this team, but a leader on this team.
Well, you know what? When I think about it now, because again, I'm just going based off what a lot of fans tell me, obviously for my own opinions. I have the ear out, and the messages and people on the streets talking about the team. I just think about this, phrase when it comes to Julius. I just think he's very deserving of seeing it through. When this thing works out, I want him on the floor. And you talked about him getting the ball rolling, coming here, going through some of those tough years, leading the team to the playoffs in 2021 for the first time in 8 seasons, having the 2 All-NBA years. I think all of the things he's done are too much and too far overlooked because of some of his shortcomings, more so than maybe any Knick I've ever seen in my lifetime. And it's gotten to the point now where I'm rooting so hard. I would root for him no matter who's in a Knick uniform. But when Julius has these games that remind you, and everyone was, we'll see what happens in the playoff. I just think he needed to be on a team where there was a little bit more pressure off. Now Brunson's coming in his own right. He's now an MVP candidate. And now you got enough pieces around where we don't need 30 points from Julius Randle. Is it going to help if we get him in his 20s? Of course. We need efficient Julius Randle. We need aggressive Julius Randle. But the days of needing him to make multiple 4 or 5 threes a game or to have these monster numbers, those are in the past. He has to be very good for them to be very good, but in a different way. And I think you're really starting to see that in January, and you'll see more of it in October.
Yeah, definitely agree 100%. I mean, those January numbers were insane. I think that's the number one thing the front office is going to look at and just be like, we need to see this at least.
Yes.
And at least till the trade deadline. We need to see what this team can be.
Absolutely. And we'll get to see this summer play out. Are you guys looking forward to this? I think this is the most excited I've ever been for the summer league. Just because the way the team's going right now, I'll be honest with you. I don't sit down and watch every single summer league game. This year, if I'm around and my schedule calls for it, it's just when the team is going like this and the excitement around the organization. And obviously now that I'm doing this, I'm really looking forward to summer league basketball. I haven't been able to say that every season.
Yeah, there's some spots on the bench, right?
Yeah.
So we got some young guys that Kolick and Pacome.
You'll get it.
We'll get a good look at what they can do, against some type of NBA competition.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't had a rookie in so long. It's just like, sure, I used to be all into summer league. I was watching when an MVP, right? Like I was.
Well, Toppin and Quickly were fun to watch in summer league when they were
Quickly's development in summer league was the most excited I think recently I've been about someone because I had no idea who he was before. Now this guy's a complete NBA player, so that's the first awakening. But it's fun. It's just a fun time. Don't take it too seriously, Knicks fans. If we go in 6 and miss everything, it's just a fun time to see the guy.
Well, I even told John the other day, I'm like, I'm itching to recap games again. Like that's my favorite part of this is to talk about the contest and break down the games and just to have any type of basketball back. And I'm a big fan of the Olympics too. And the Knicks get to rest through that and most notably Brunson. But the basketball coming up in the summer makes those next couple of months go faster because I know we're itching for October. We're itching for Knicks basketball to be back. So this is giving us some news. This is giving us some fix before that date comes.
I'm excited. Let's look forward to the recaps.
Definitely, man. And guys, Kevin, John, it was an absolute pleasure. Really appreciate you guys coming on. And there's still going to be some news. There's still going to be some trades. So the banter will continue throughout the offseason and the series will continue to go strong. And I appreciate all the support. As always, talk to you guys soon.